Professor Laffin put the emphasis on the truce on British discomfort. I'd be interested in your three perspectives as to why the IRA engaged in the truce.
After the truce, Richard Mulcahy, the Chief of Staff of the IRA, remarked, perhaps incautiously, we couldn't have driven the British out of anything more than a fairly decent-sized police barracks. Because when De Valera came back from the States, he was influenced by American public opinion. He took the view, what we want is big open conflicts, battles. We don't want... we don't want sniping and so on. We want a big event. The result, the attack on the Custom House, precisely, which was a success in that it destroyed the Custom House.
And the records of local government
vandalism. But it did result in the capture of a very large number of the Dublin IRA. It was a very serious blow. Collins was devastated by the capture of so many of his colleagues. So the IRA leadership and the political leadership was very well aware that British pressure was increasing. Okay, as I said or suggested, some elements in the IRA could have carried on forever. Guerrilla groups can do that. We know that from later experience, and the IRA itself was learning that. It was experimenting. It didn't have precedents to go on in the way that more later groups did, who were able to study the IRA in Ireland. So there were very strong military reasons. So many men captured, so little ammunition, the British pressure constantly increasing, more and more informers reporting what was happening. From a military point of view, at the very least, a pause of several months. And remember too, that the truce came into effect in early July, just after the longest day of the year, 21st of June. The negotiations began just in midsummer. Midsummer is a bad time for guerrilla forces. They operate much better in the dark in winter. If they could have a truce in the summer and autumn and resume in the winter, that they might have got more guns, and of course that they would be able to carry on more effectively. So there were several good reasons, military reasons from the Irish point of view, why a truce was welcome. Now some elements in the IRA were dismayed, appalled, and took the view, we're doing very well, whatever might be the case in Wexford or Sligo or wherever, we are able to carry on, but they all obeyed the order. They all obeyed the directive from De Valera, from Mulcahy as Chief of Staff. There was strict discipline. At midday on the 11th of July, the killing stopped. There had been killings that morning, but at midday, it stopped. Now, there were incidents afterwards, but tiny in scale, absolutely, and insignificant, really, compared with what had happened before. So there were different pressures. I wouldn't say equal pressures, but powerful pressures, quite different, being brought to bear on the Irish and on the British government.
I think the general consensus of historians is what you're looking at by mid-1921 is a stalemate. It could have continued with neither side emerging victorious. Alluding to a point Michael made, I think in response to the very first question about the slow British response initially in 1920 to the emergence of the IRA's guerrilla campaign, by mid-1921 they were copping on. They were becoming more effective. If you read the memoirs of General Sir Neville Macready, the head of the British Army in Ireland at the time, he talks about the fact that the army were being schooled in tactics for dealing with guerrilla warfare in the Curragh by 1921. They were also, the Crown forces had copped on. They didn't sit in these little barracks where the IRA could just come along and shoot them. They didn't travel around in trucks. If they travelled around in trucks, they brought civilians with them because they knew right well that the IRA wouldn't blow them up if they had civilians in the trucks. They were just becoming, they were beginning to tighten the noose. And if you look at somewhere like Longford, I think it was in June or July 1921, Mulcahy commented that the situation there was truly appalling because after Sean McKeown's arrest in March 1921, the place pretty much stopped. So you've got counties like Longford who previously had been active, were becoming inactive. That would have freed up the Crown forces to concentrate on the remaining outposts in West Cork, in Mayo, and eventually they would have strangled the life out of the IRA. Something similar to which the Irish National Army did with the guerrilla outposts during the Civil War. So I think the truce came at the right time for the IRA, would be my view.
One thing we actually haven't mentioned is the importance of the Ulster Special Constabulary in counteracting IRA activity in Ulster, particularly in the 6 counties, areas like South Armagh, Fermanagh, where there was a building of guerrilla activity. And I see Jim McDermott there, who's written about the IRA in the north in this period. I mean, certainly I've seen a military paper stating that in the summer of 1920, just before the specials were formed, the IRA really had the run of the country in South Down and South Armagh. But they're brought in when Churchill talks about arming the Protestants, his words at that summer meeting in August 1921, where Craig is a junior minister in the Lloyd George administration, permanent secretary at the Ministry of Pensions. And he's pressing for placing the UVF on an official footing and livering them as an extension of the police, as a kind of a black and tan force for the North. And the government endorsed this. And by the autumn of 1920, you have the build-up of the specials, soon 32,000 strong, massed on the border and other troubled areas. That's very, very important in, if you like, ensuring, of course, that the 6-county area is partitioned in 1920, 1921.